Dearest 31st subscribers, I've seen a lot of people online trying to estimate what would be the price of Greenland if Trump were actually to purchase it. I think the way they approach the problem is wrong. So they try to estimate what's the value of Greenland. They say, okay, there is a specific economy, there is some natural resources, there is some geopolitical value. Yes, Greenland has about $3 billion worth of economy right now, and maybe there is a lot of potential in how much they can extract these resources in the future. But ultimately, it's a much less developed country versus the current state of most of the US. And that would actually mean that the US would have to invest into this territory more than anything. So it's hard to estimate if it would be actually an economic gain for them more than an economic detriment. There is definitely a geopolitical value in having such a large territory so close to Europe and the North Pole and Russia. This is still the value of Greenland. That's not the price of Greenland. There is no price for Greenland. There is no market for countries, and countries are one of those products, if we can call them like that have a strong emotional attachment. So as every product, like a teddy bear that has an emotional attachment, they become unique. And so the seller has pretty much a monopoly. And so they set their own price, and there is no absolute price that we can estimate. There is definitely a way to kind of try to make an offer. And I think the easiest way to go about it is to look at actually the Greenland constitutions from 2009. So Greenland has the ability to vote for their own independence by referendum at any time. The Danish government just has to ratify it. The main reason why they don't become independent is they actually are dependent on Denmark for transfers, because Greenland tends to be, as we said, underdeveloped versus the rest of the Western world. And so gaining that independence, while beautiful from a kind of cultural, political standpoint, would mean taking a cut on their wealth and on their ability of having a public budget for their growth. So it ultimately is a money problem, if you think about it. That's why they're not detaching from Denmark. So it will be a price that the US could pay and promise to pay to Greenland in order for them to get independent and then be annexed or become a protectorate of the US. It would be something like almost like a bribe that the US would have to pay to every voting inhabitant, or at least a majority of the voting inhabitants of Greenland. So there's about 56,000 inhabitants in Greenland. About 40,000 of them have voting rights. So if we assume like a 90% turnout to such a referendum, we would need to get at least 50% plus one of these voters. So about 18, approximating to 20,000 to be a bit more comfortable. So each of these 20,000 voters would need to get a substantial amount of money immediately to be sure that they would, gain something from this vote of independence and this transfer of ownership or link from Denmark to the US. So what would be a reasonable price is hard to estimate, and it's probably very personal. But I do think if somebody offered 100 times their annual income, that could be a good price to start with. So if you consider that the GDP per capita is 48,000, if we targeted, let's say the bottom half probably would be closer to 30,000, we could offer $3 million each, take it or leave it, for example. So if we consider 20,000 voters, that would be about 60 billions, plus or minus. So that could be a starting point. It's hard to say if they would accept it. Of course, we would need to promise like full independence, full representation in the US Congress. We would need to add a star maybe to the flag or some other kind of symbolic honor. So there would be a lot of other considerations, but that would be the price of Greenland, in my opinion.